Hello, everyone. Thanks all of you for being here with us today. It's a lovely day, sunny day in Ljubljana. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Dvoršak. I'm a representative of Medinea On Air, the pedagogical committee at the Academy of Music, University of Ljubljana, Slovenia. This webinar is part of the third session of Medinea On Air, an online and free program of exchange of knowledge, co-funded by Erasmus Plus and 6 Medinea member institutions from France, Italy, Malta, Portugal, Turkey, and Slovenia. Today, the webinar is going to be around 40 minutes. Please feel free to interact by pressing the raise your hand button and waiting to be given the floor, or write us a question in the chat box anytime, and we will then at the end of this session try to answer all the questions. I am very happy, I'm very honored to welcome our speaker, Maestro Marko Letonja. Marko, hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
So we are going to speak today about auditions from the perspective of a conductor on both sides, as of standing on the podium and being a member of the jury or the panel. It depends of the occasion. Marko, let's start with maybe a little bit of history. Now, at this moment, you're a chief conductor and general music director of the Bremen Philharmonic. Before that, you were posted as a chief conductor and music director in Strasbourg, and before that in Basel, and so on. You first studied piano and then later decided for conducting. What was the reason or the calling you had to first study in Ljubljana and then go to Vienna to study with Ottmar Suttner?
It was the most important thing was to have the opportunity to join two experiences which were completely different. One was being home, surrounded by people that I know and people with whom was not sort of too difficult to have an approach with and to work. So one would be not too much paralyzed by the fear which is inside every young musician trying to explore unknown terrains. And the other one is, of course, is a big city with a lot of possibilities. And this combination of both of them was at that time, at the age of 22, actually ideal. And the second thing which was ideal for me was that in Ljubljana we didn't have much possibility to work with the orchestra. While in Vienna at the school there was an orchestra at our disposal, and we could work with the orchestra on basically on almost every week, which was fantastic.
Yes, of course. While studying conducting, when was the time when you got to the point and decided, maybe I know you were young, and also, but when should you when did you find out you will pursue the career as a conductor? Namely, you graduated in 1989, and already 2 years after that you became a music director of the Slovenian Philharmonic Orchestra, where you stayed for 12 years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it happened during the first rehearsal of the first rehearsal of the first orchestra rehearsal that I had a chance to conduct. We played Salieri, Mozart for flute and oboe, and the Academy at the same institution that you are now, where Simon, you are now sitting, and with the students' orchestra, and I thought I was in heaven. So that's why I decided that I didn't want to miss that feeling, to be surrounded by musicians, because the sound was so much different. And this every conductor knows, that when you are used to the sound of the orchestra from the hall, and then when you come on the podium, then you know that the sound is very much different, especially the perception of the energy and the energy exchange between the musicians in yourself is so much stronger that you then, I didn't want to miss that. And from that moment, I decided that I left everything else, which was keeping me busy before, all kinds of different music, jazz music, rock music, chamber music, all kinds of other stuff that I was doing, sailing and whatever, to earn the money. I left everything on the side and decided to become a conductor because of that. And then I think that I was extremely lucky that the position at the Slovenian Philharmonic, which is a great orchestra with a great tradition from 1701. So I was then later on also had a chance to celebrate with the orchestra the 300 years of existence of the orchestra a couple of years later. And I had a great chance, or that this orchestra was just looking for a new conductor. And since we are a small country, there were not many colleagues around. And I was given a chance to conduct first contemporary music, record a little bit of the contemporary music, and obviously it went well somehow. So the orchestra decided, despite the fact that I was young and inexperienced, the orchestra then decided to take a risk and appoint this 25 or 26 years old conductor who I was at that time.
So we can say you got at one point you got addicted to the sound and the experience of the orchestra, and then the things moved in the right direction. Are you still addicted to the sound and the experience? Or, did everything now is your mission in life, maybe?
I'm still addicted to that sound, and I think that the proof of this is when we work on an opera production from the very beginning, and this means that you have a music rehearsal with the singers about 3, 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 weeks before the opening night, and then you won't see the orchestra for almost another at least 2 weeks, or maybe sometimes it's a month. And so you've been in that city for a month and you haven't seen the orchestra. And I think it's not only me who is missing that, but I'm probably the one who is missing it most. So still addicted to that sound. And of course, I think that with experience, of course, you get another, how would you call that? It's not knowledge, but you kind of understand how to help fixing the problems and how to help creating the right atmosphere for work, and also how to fulfill or how to make a realization of your musical concept while you are rehearsing. And that takes a lot of time. It took a lot of time with me. Maybe there's somebody who's more talented or has another approach and it goes faster. With me, I needed quite a few years until I understood how this whole thing works. And I'm still learning, because we know that every conductor between 0 and 75 is a young conductor. And when you reach the age of 75, then you start being a conductor. So I have a little bit more time now.
A little bit more time. That's good to hear. If we now go to these young conductors from 0 till 25, maybe, there aren't any written rules what a young conductor should do after finishing a study at the academy or some other school, how to engage in the professional sphere, or how to make themselves present and known. Do you have any advice regarding what's the one of maybe possible steps to do, or how to begin in a way, which I know it can be really different from the state to state, from the academy or person to person, but maybe some small suggestions or advice.
I think that most of the young conductors will get a chance, or two, or if they are lucky, five, in the local environment where they studied. Either it's with a school orchestra, with the academy orchestra, conservatory orchestra, whatever the name is. And if they are a little bit more lucky, but still quite possible, I think that it's quite possible that the philharmonic or symphony orchestra, which is existing in that city or town or wherever they live, where there is a symphony or an opera orchestra, will probably give them one chance as well. Simply because of curiosity, because we want to see new musicians and want to see and the orchestra is constantly seeking for young conductors. Even the most established ones, they want young, exciting conductors, maybe completely change their approach to the music or completely change the way of understanding music. And so that is, I think, most important. So use those chances as much as you can. Be prepared 110%. Know all the music that you will conduct by heart. Try to remember every single instrument. What is the instrument playing? The great experience would be it's a little bit harder, I know, for everybody who's listening out there saying this guy is mad. But we had an exercise as well that we had to write down, for example, the second bassoon in the Brahms symphony out from memory. And it's a good exercise just to know how well you actually know the score. So this would be the basic of that, would be really the absolutely spotless knowledge of the score, spotless knowledge of the background of this period of the music that you're going to conduct, including small things about biography of the composer, what did he write, whom did he meet, which other forms of art or which other interests did she or he have. And all that helps to gain for yourself as much information as you possibly can absorb. And when you have those information absorbed, then you will feel more secure when you come in front of the orchestra. If you only know the music by listening to other interpretations of the same piece while you're looking at the score, especially in the beginning, when you're not experienced, you will miss about, I would say, 80% of what is conducting actually is. You can learn the gestures 1, 2, 3, 4 quite fast. That is not a problem. You can also learn a melody or a harmony or even a contrapunct of one symphony or one piece that you're going to perform, but you can't learn what does it mean to you. And you can't learn what do you think that this should actually, how this piece will be interpreted by you. And that is the most important thing on what your colleagues, and it doesn't matter if those colleagues are sitting on a panel of a conducting competition, or if those colleagues are sitting in the orchestra of the orchestra that you are actually conducting, they will all understand it immediately. And that is, I think, the most important thing, that you take time to really prepare yourself.
Yes, I'm certain of that. There is a big difference between a young musician studying and playing an instrument for usually more than 15 years before graduating, and on the other hand, young conductor having maybe 4 or 5 years of experience in front of the orchestra, usually youth or amateur musicians. instrumentalists get a chance to audition and play in the professional orchestras even before graduating most of the time. For a beginner conductor, that is most of the time not the way to get more experience. How can, from your experience, Marko, how can a young conductor cope on one hand with the lack of experience and on the other with ever-growing competition for a small amount of empty positions in the world of conducting?
Yeah, that's a very, very hard question, and it's a very I can only give you a very neutral answer on that, because the answer would, of course, there is a lot of luck involved in this as well. Not only once you know the whole thing, like I said before, there's still some luck needed that you're actually going to be invited, first of all, that you're going to be given the chance to do that. I think there is no way that you can somehow make it up for the lack of experience with the live orchestra if you didn't have a chance. That would be like, it would be the same for me as if you say to me, okay, you never drove a car, you have read 10 books about how to drive a car in different countries, but you actually never had the chance to drive a car. Mm. So how can I now start to drive the car without any experience? Well, you have to sit in it and start to drive. That's the answer. With the orchestra conducting, there's not much difference. And so, which means that if you're lucky, you will have those initial chances with the school orchestra, with conservatory orchestra and so on. But the only thing what you can do is, if you remember that conducting is mostly about communicating, and communicating is not only with words. And communicating with an orchestra or with people that you need to lead sometimes means use your eyes, use your expression of your face, of course, use your hands, definitely. That would be the first one, but that is self-understanding. And try to communicate as much as you can. Be aware of the fact that in maybe let's say first 10 concerts that you will conduct, 90% of the errors that you will hear or mistakes that the orchestra will make under your direction will be because of you. You can't change it, but be aware of this. Mm-hmm. So try to seek in the beginning, if the orchestra is not together, that is very often the upbeat. Now we have cameras, we have even phone, put the phone there, record yourself and see what's wrong. You will probably see it, and try to communicate try to speak as little as possible. And just observe yourself and try to also, one thing that I can say to the young students is, we young conductors, we don't know that we were speaking about, let's say, you speak about the 90% of mistakes that happen during one rehearsal. If it's our fault, of course, we try to do better. If it's the orchestra's, under brackets, of course, fault, then we tend to correct immediately everything. The minute we hear a wrong note, we raise our hands and say, it's a G sharp. And the musician will say, yes, thank you, sorry, my mistake, or whatever. And it's just a loss of time, because an excellent musician, which most of people, if not everybody who is sitting in an orchestra are, plus they have a lot of experience, will not do the same mistake on the second attempt. Mm. So correcting things on the first attempt is a lot of losing time. If you hear a completely wrong note in a Brahms symphony, then it's probably a reading problem. If you hear it for the second time during the when you play it for the second time, then you of course say, please, do you have a wrong note there? But this would be something also to, in other words, to understand orchestra's capacity for themselves as well, because they also know that the celli are playing contrapunct to the first violins, for example, just to name a stupid example. And at the first run, this won't be 100% together. It's not needed. Sorry, is there a problem?
Yes, no, everything fine.
Okay. It's not needed to immediately go on this spot and say, okay, now first violins and cello together on the first reading, let's try to fix that. Because maybe you will use 5 minutes of rehearsal and fix this problem, which could have been fixed itself, could have fixed itself on the second reading. So that would be another possibility or another hint to say to the young conductors what are the most important or most common turn-offs or mistakes that we do when we are dealing with the orchestra for the first time.
Yes, thank you. Now, if we focus a little bit on auditions, so auditions for conductors are, of course, not so common as those for instrumentalists or singers. Which aspects are the most important for preparing for an audition for a newcomer conductor? What are you, for example, as a music director looking for when searching for a young conductor or a Kapellmeister in Germany? Does it happen that you and the orchestra don't agree about choosing the same candidate? I know I asked now 3 questions, but I can repeat.
Yeah, well, okay, let's go from the last one. Of course it happens. And that's why that's why we have then many sessions, and we speak about it, and we look at the videos if we need one more time in order to, because every audition now is filmed, of course, also for the orchestra. And we try to exactly see if the orchestra, for example, says that they couldn't play together. And I had the opinion from the other side, because mostly I'm sitting not in the orchestra, but on the other side, like in the audience. I didn't have that feeling. Then we have to double check who's actually right and examine. So that would happen a lot, quite often. But it's our problem. It's like a football game with the thing they say. Well, I don't know how they call this. I'm not a football fan, but they do something like that, and they run off the and then they run back, no, and then they say penalty or whatever. Yeah, no. So we do that too. So we don't do that sign, but we just do it and then look at it and evaluate the whole thing one more time. I think that again, speak as little as possible when you audition. Communicate with hands. Try not to move too much when you're conducting. Even when you're very nervous, try to put your feet to feel the roots below your feet. That will stabilize as well the sound of the orchestra, so that even the same orchestra will sound differently if they have a feeling that you are, how do you call that, grounded, not grounded, earth yeah. Somehow. Prizemljen. I will say it in Slovenian because I don't know how to translate this.
Earthly, being down to earth.
Being connected, that's different, but connected. Connected with that will give you a little bit more security, because we have to understand that we're dealing with a very stressful situation very often for young conductors. Stepping up and conducting an orchestra is a very stressful operation by itself. And so you have to minimize the side effects of this as much as you can. And what was the second question? Sorry, I forgot to.
Yes, what are you as the music director, for instance, looking for in a young conductor when he comes to audition?
When she comes now, we're very lucky that the amount of young conductors, girls or ladies, and boys, is almost equal now. So this is, I think, it's a lot of changes, and we absolutely warmly welcome that. The orchestra is very happy, and the equal opportunities for both sexes is a great thing. And so when a young conductor comes, I'll try to, first of all, see if the talent of communicating to the orchestra with hands is there. And this is something that an experienced conductor or an experienced member of the panel or artistic director knows. When you see somebody, you know if the basic skills of the communication with hands is there. So that would be first thing. And then you will say, that's not much help, because talent, as we all know, sometimes cannot be
enough.
Yeah, exactly. So the second thing for me would also be to understand if that this person who is trying to find her or his way into the musical world has got the potential of communicating this with other methods, not only with what I said before, but also how good is the skill of, for example, how good are the languages? If you work in a French orchestra, and I worked in the French orchestra, when I came to the French to the Orchestra de Strasbourg, I didn't speak a word in French. And of course, it didn't help much that I spoke English and German, because half of the orchestra spoke English and the other half spoke German. And I always had to find a common language between them. So I had to translate everything twice. And this was a great loss of time. That would also be very important if we're talking about the first impact with the orchestra, because if you don't speak the language, the native language of the orchestra, or a language that most of the members of the orchestra speak, then you will have a problem with communicating your ideas, because they won't be able to understand what you're saying. Therefore, so this is the other thing that I would, how is the communication proceeding? Is the candidate, when she or he stops the orchestra, is it done in a proper way? Is it done in a decent way? In a respectful way? Even the fact that we said that we are in a nervous situation, so try to control your temper as much as you can. There's nothing worse, and as in the first rehearsal, after 5 minutes, you go first over, and you point a finger, or you say something with, you raise the voice, and you say something. That will probably mean that you won't get this job. And the rest is according to the things that we already said, like musical preparation and all that, which is self-understanding for me. So I'm trying to check all those things.
Yes. Regarding everything you said now, you've been, of course, auditioning young conductors, and a lot of times sitting in a jury on the conducting competitions. Are markings those two fields any different? Do you maybe at the competitions are you looking at some other things that are important to you, or is actually at the end the same stuff you're looking for?
You mean now the question was like if there is any difference between a basic competition or for young
Yeah, or
conductors?
auditioning. Yeah.
No, there is I think there is an element, of course. It's a little bit different when you have to judge somebody in order to get to find a future collaborator, assistant conductor, Erster Kapellmeister, whatever the position is. I think there is a difference because in a conducting competition, you have to also judge see the performing potential has more importance in a competition, of course, and that you can see with direction of the orchestra immediately, but also most of the competitions for young conductors are also with the audience in the third round, and then you see also the reaction of the audience. You see the reaction of yourself, whether this young conductor can really, with her or his way of making music, really capture you completely, and you actually feel that this interpretation from every possible way, from musical way, from the energetic way, from the psychological way, it actually reaches you, and that would be a little bit of difference there. But the rest, I would say 90% is the same.
Yeah, sure. So if we now change a little bit the position of being not at the podium and being auditioned, but sitting in a panel or a jury as a conductor, what should we conductors look for, or what are you, of course, looking yourself when you're auditioning a musician for, I don't know, an empty seat in the orchestra, or a singer for a new opera production? There are certainly some differences how you would mark a horn player or a cello player, for instance, with your colleagues who are cellists in the orchestra and are looking for a new colleague among them. What are the differences? What are our ears, conductor ears, is more focused on, maybe?
I think that we have to first of all see if the ground skills of every musician, which are needed to be a successful performer, are there. So my colleagues cellists will judge the sound. They will judge as well the style. They will judge the technical skills. They will see if somebody is trying to cheat a little bit in order to get results, but trying to play not spiccato in order to get a better intonation, or just the technical things. That is clear to the group, who is of course lucky enough with me judging the same, being on the same panel of the audition. But for me, it's important to see if the ground feelings about the rhythm, but really a rhythm. So not approximately, and not rushing if you are under stress, which we are most of the time when we're on stage. So if somebody's rushing on the audition, which is of course extremely stressful situation, then would be my turn to maybe even go, which I do very often. I would go on stage and just simply conduct and try to see if with a good advice, musical advice, I can as well obtain a better stability of the rhythmical stability of the candidate. Or if I say that we had a feeling that this F sharp was a little bit too sharp, and if we can fix that note on a horn, and if it actually happens, that those would be the things that are most important. And I have to as well be aware of the tradition of the orchestra, of the sound of the orchestra, actual sound, and try to see if this young musician will fit into that sound, or maybe also improve it or change it. And what are these changes? What will these changes be? So this is then my job, and therefore I think that for advice for me to young conductors who are going to be in an auditional panel for the first time for an orchestra, for whatever position, doesn't matter, from the concertmaster until the last tutti position, I don't make any difference there, would be step up and conduct. That helps you to understand if the young musician in front of you is actually can follow. And second thing I would strongly advise to everybody is to do all the auditions from round 0, from the first round until the third round behind the curtain. Yeah, that is also. So if you're a musical director, or if you have an influence, you're a conductor of the orchestra, and you have an input on that, try to put it through that the auditions are done with the curtain. It very much helps. In order to get very the results are simply easier to achieve and much better and much longer stay much longer time on the positive side. That is my personal experience.
Sure. Marko, before we give chance to our listeners to ask maybe some questions, I have the last question, a little bit provocative, but it concerns our last discussion. What happens when there is a disagreement between panel members and you as a chief conductor and the orchestra, maybe, when choosing a new colleague in the orchestra? What's your role in that time when there comes to disagreements between?
Well, in order to understand, to try to give you an answer to this question, is you have to carefully read all the internal and external documents existing about how your orchestra is actually functioning. Mm. And it's very well written how the panel is composed, what happens in those difficult situations, and it varies from an orchestra to another one. You will be sometimes given the possibility of veto in an orchestra, which means that even if the orchestra and the group says, we want the candidate A, and you say, I want the candidate B, the possibility of veto will have as a result that nobody will be taken, and you will have to do the audition again. So it's quite a strong weapon that you sometimes have, and it can be also reduced to a very minimum, where you are actually sitting together with your colleagues of the orchestra and have one vote out of 80, and only at the very end of the audition, they will be like, this is sometimes in Germany they use the system, that then there will be four big groups who will make the decision, which means let's say we have a cello audition. So the group of the cellist is one vote. The orchestra, the rest of the colleagues, is second vote. Vorstand, the representatives of the orchestra, is the third vote, and the chief conductor is the fourth vote. And so, since this system varies from country to country, the first thing that you take after you sign the contract, take all those papers and carefully read through. If you have, or better even, that you do it maybe one day before you sign the contract, because then if you sign the contract already and then you discover that you actually have no power of changing the orchestra, and if you feel that the orchestra needs some changes in order to improve the sound or whatever you feel that your artistic mission is, then it's going to be too late. So this, and it unfortunately there's not a general advice because of the different ways, and even the panel can be from 5 people on the panel up to 100. We know all the systems, they are very much different. Sometimes it's only 5 members of the orchestra who are judging every single audition, and they have this task to do it. Or you have the whole orchestra voting, and this is the only panel. There's no chief conductor. Like in Vienna, for example, no? Vienna Philharmonica has no chief conductor, so the orchestra chooses their members by themselves. And obviously it works, because they keep the tradition and they keep their quality over the years. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So let's now, we don't have much more time, but let's invite our listeners. If anybody has a question, you can raise your hand and ask, or just write, whatever you prefer. Oh, yes, Anna Castro. Hello, Anna, can you turn on the mic and just ask, please?
Yes, hi, hello. So my question is, I recently had an audition where I had very little time. It was a very complex contemporary piece that the players were not used to playing. And therefore, as I started my audition, there were a lot of problems that needed to be fixed, of, tempo changes. So in that situation, I either had to stay with a smaller part of the piece and make sure that it's put together and it works, or try and do, let's say, most of it, but never really have time to properly put it together. That decision between rehearsing something and that meaning you miss music, or going through all the music, but it's being, a little bit messy, is something I struggle with when we have so little time. I know it's a complex question, but what would you rather see in a conductor? Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for your question. It's very interesting. I think that if the orchestra didn't know the piece, which obviously is the case. Now, you said that the orchestra, it was a contemporary piece, the orchestra didn't know the piece, then I think that it's very important that after a minute or even 30 seconds or something like that, when you actually understand that the rhythmical patterns or maybe some other things in the way of writing of this composer needs, of course, to be worked on. Whether it is the structure of the music, whether it's the rhythmical patterns, whether it's the balance problems which make it impossible to play together. So I think that it would be I would be very happy if a young conductor who would see that the orchestra is obviously struggling with this would try to give them the key how to unlock this music. Key means that if you see that the rhythmical patterns are complicated and the orchestra is constantly falling out of rhythm because of the rhythmical, complex rhythmical structure, you take one example and you do it a couple of times slower. If the problem is extremely high pitch, extremely low, extremely something that needs to be worked on in a section, and the section can, because it's so difficult, then cannot be focused on anything else because they couldn't fix the intonation problems, then spending 2 minutes on this would actually help. I don't think it's a good method if you constantly interrupt, because after, let's say, 20 minutes tops, every orchestra will be then really tired. And it won't help. Then when you stop from the 21st minute, they will go, okay, great. Yeah, it's not helping. But I think that fixing the most important thing, which you evaluate at that moment, whatever is according to your perception, helps. And then you let at least try to let it flow for another time, for as much time as this work that you have done now will hold.
Okay.
And ignore other problems at that moment. So I think that, I don't know, how did you react? What did you do?
I think I reacted incorrectly because I really just wanted to make sure we at least had a section that was working. And this was very chaotic. It wasn't minor details. And so therefore, I think perhaps the last 2 minutes of the piece weren't played at all, but I only really had if it wasn't 10 minutes, it was, I don't know, 12, it was very limited time. So I chose to, because I think as young conductor, I fear that if I don't correct something or work on something, perhaps the jury thinks I haven't heard it or I haven't noticed, which if I had a rehearsal, I would do as you say, and I would let it go and play again and see what happens. But when you only have 10 minutes, you think, well, if I don't address this, perhaps the jury thinks my ears are wrong and I have not perceived it. So it's that balance. Yeah, but you're right. Interrupting all the time is also not great.
Yeah, Anna, I think that, you are absolutely right to do it once or twice, but not 10 times. So once or twice will help the orchestra also to say, okay, we know which direction she wants us to go. And it also gives them an idea about what is your focus of the piece. And but you can't do it more. I would suggest that you stop like you did and correct things and maybe really work on a small section and then let a lot of music flow. It's called, the insiders call it the Simon Rattle method. That's how Simon Rattle worked most of the time with the Berlin Philharmonic, with excellent results. And he was fixing one problem, or it was not, let's not call it a problem, but one detail of a piece of music that he was performing. And then he would come to the next detail, but maybe 10 minutes later, and fix that. And his method was that the bridge between the first interruption, first correction of the and the second, this worked as a bridge, and it fixed itself. So I think that is a good method if you have to work on a contemporary piece.
Okay.
But of course, I agree with you. You would probably need more than 12 minutes. That is a little bit short for the contemporary piece. So sorry for that.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions, maybe? We have one raised hand. Shirt. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Maestro. I have a question about competitions. So we know that we have like 7 or 10 minutes, and as said, the jury expects to see something special from you, and still you have to decide to play it through or to work. The ratio, is it the same as in an audition, or should we let it run through more?
I think that a good mixture of both of them would probably work best. I think that you have to, the same as we just talked with Anna, I think that a good example of you start to conducting a music and you see that the phrasing is not going the way you want it. And then it's an important thing. It's an important thing because it's the first subject of symphony, and it's a general, how you call it in Germany, Baustein, piece of which is the central piece of how you put music, how you put the structure of music together. And in order, then I would definitely fix this, definitely, and then of course play it through. Or even if you have let's say, what do you say, 10 minutes?
7
8?
or 10, yeah, it depends. 7 till 10.
And how long is the piece that you had to conduct?
It was Beethoven, the Fifth Symphony, first and third movement. So that's too much.
Bloody hell, that is too much. Yeah, no, that you can't do. I mean, but so it's, well, then you already know. Analyze this. What you said. You have what is it? First movement and third movement together. Let's say roughly 15 minutes. Who cares?
15, yeah, okay. Something like that.
Okay. And you have 10 minutes. So which means that you can't play the exposition is more important than the closing section. Okay, so focus on that. And then you skip the if you have something to say about the development section, and you know that this could be that could be a problem, you anticipate that, but you will have to definitely choose the things that you will have to work on. And then it is much more important to choose your own excerpts from the symphony that you want to try out before you actually start to conduct, and not just start to conduct and say, let's see how far we come. Mm-hmm. That will normally be a sign of a non-structural conductor who can be, it has nothing to do with quality, but a structure way to lead a rehearsal is something else. And it happens also now. I mean, to me, when I have when we have an opera to perform and we don't have enough rehearsals, by far not enough rehearsals, then I have to decide as well which of the arias or which of the duets or which of the ensembles I'm going to work on and which I'm not going to even touch, because I know that this can happen. We have done last weekend with the Bremen Philharmonic Shostakovich Festival with symphonies number 1, 9, 10, 14, and 15, plus Lady Macbeth Suite and first piano concerto. And we had 3, 6, 9, 11 rehearsals, including general rehearsals for that. It was a very tough schedule. So I had to make a plan for every rehearsal. And I put the post-its stickers inside the score exactly on this section, which I knew that was either important for me for the structure or either important for the musicians in order to put the music together. So I think that something like that I would definitely do. And of course, in the competition, I would definitely do the piece of music which will let me or allow me to show my talent and skills, and maybe not choose the other ones which could maybe contribute in a negative way. So,
if we have the option. Thank you.
Yeah, but definitely make a plan before. Mm-hmm. Make a plan before. Yeah. And you can also announce. You say, ladies and gentlemen, we've got 10 minutes. I'd like to do this. Or you just announce you're going to do this, and then you just stay on that section. I think that is definitely better than just to play and be afraid be sort of think that you have to conduct that the most music you play, the better it is. There is some, of course, limits there. If you, in the Schubert unfinished symphony, in 10 minutes, if you manage to do the first 8 bars, that probably won't help either. So good compromise between both of them would mostly work.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I know there may be some more questions, but we are quite now over our presumed time, so we will have to finish. First of all, Marko, much thank you for your time and your advice. All the advices, of course, but your valuable experience, which I'm certain that will help our young conductors who are listening and will listen to this recording later, will help them on their way to the podiums around the world. Thank you everybody who joined us, and I wish everybody a nice weekend, and hope we will see each other or hear each other next time or at the other next session of Medinea On Air. So thank you all and goodbye.
Bye-bye.